up, can we talk about polyunsaturated fats? I think a lot of people either don't know what they are, or they think because they've read somewhere or heard from someone that unsaturated fats are actually healthy, and that saturated fats are unhealthy. Can you talk a little bit about that and how it might relate to a developing life?
That's a very extensive topic, but the quickest that I can summarize it with will be so basically the stability of the fats is what determines their health benefit or their negative effects. And the more unsaturated the fat is, the more unstable it is. Many people probably easily recognize this fact from rancid fish or rancid oil, the rancid cooking oils. And all of these are unsaturated fats. They usually come from either fish or from vegetables. And the fats that are stable, that are basically less saturated or completely saturated, and those happen to be olive oil, which is a monounsaturated fat, or coconut oil, which is a fully saturated fat, beef tallow, or any fat from a ruminant animal tends to be saturated as well. So in general, and by the way, the unsaturated fats are used by specific enzymes in our organism to produce inflammatory mediators directly. So right there you have a role, and knowing the important role of inflammation in preeclampsia, in eclampsia, in birth defects, in imprinting the child and the mother, subsequently their health for being good or bad. Any doctor, I mean, you walk into any primary care physician, they will tell you inflammation, chronic inflammation is not good, right? Well, guess what? The unsaturated fats, the omega-3s and the omega-6 are actually direct precursors to inflammation in the body. The less of them you eat, the less inflammation you'll have. There's just no other mechanism through which inflammation can be produced. And conversely, the more of them you eat, the more inflammation you'll have. But the damage of the unsaturated fat goes beyond inflammation. And we have to look at the steroids a little bit to get a comparison. So steroids such as progesterone, testosterone, dihydrotestosterone, pregnenolone, DHEA, these are the equivalent of either saturated fats or very, very little unsaturated fats, like monounsaturated fats, like olive oil. And hormones such as estrogen, aldosterone, cortisol, all of these steroids that are known to be detrimental to pregnancy and to health in general, they're highly unsaturated molecules, and they're very similar in structure to the omega-3 and the omega-6 fatty acids. So by intaking a large amount of the unsaturated fatty acids, not only are you increasing inflammation, you're also creating environment where the effects over the body are similar as if the levels of your unsaturated hormones was. In other words, fatty acids have hormonal effects, even though they don't necessarily very accurately bind to a specific steroid receptor. Their overall effects on the cell are similar to what the effects of these harmful steroids is. In other words, they will increase the cellular uptake of water. They will stimulate cell division. They will inhibit differentiation of a stem cell into an organ. In other words, they will push the organism, and also they inhibit the production of energy, of course, just like anything out there that's anti-metabolic. So in general, you're pushing the organism towards a low metabolic energy state, and a state with increased basically signaling of cortisol, estrogen, aldosterone, prolactin, and every single one of these hormones is perfectly capable of terminating a pregnancy almost immediately. So clearly not something that you want a pregnant woman to be exposed to. And in general, anything that terminates pregnancy tends to be unhealthy for the organism, whether the mother or a child, aside from pregnancy completely, even for a male. So that's what these unsaturated fats do. Two major roles. One, pro-inflammatory. Two, they work like some of those stress hormones that first of all put us under stress, and second of all, over time are known to powerfully inhibit metabolic production of energy.
Wow. Okay, so quick before we leave, maybe if a pregnant woman or a young family or really anyone wanted to make a quick list of foods to probably avoid because they might be high in this polyunsaturated fat that seems to wreak havoc on metabolism. I mean, what would that list maybe consist of off the top of your head?
So I would fully avoid cold water fatty fish such as salmon, mackerel, anything that's caught in cold water and it has a significant amount of fat. So for example, trout is a cold water fish, but it's a cold freshwater fish, and typically it doesn't have a lot of fat on it. It tends to be a lean fish. It's well cooked. Will have probably, especially if it's grilled, most of the fat will probably have already drained away. And if you peel off the skin, it happens to make for a very good lean fish. But things like fatty fishes from cold regions, especially salt water, cold water, are to be avoided. But seafood in general is good. So things like shrimp, oysters, squid, calamari, more warm water fish, or at least lean cold water fish, such as cod, is great. And then, tuna, if it's lean, it could be also, good. In general, seafood is great as long as you avoid the fats. And if there is fat, then make sure you're getting fish from, or at least the animal, from warmer tropical regions, because the warmer the climate, the more saturated the fat inside the animal is. And then in terms of avoiding other sources of polyunsaturated fat is avoid seed oils. Anything that has corn oil, canola oil, cottonseed oil. All of these oils are actually waste products of specific industries, either agricultural or, like textiles, such as the cottonseed. And about 80 years ago, these industries were like trying to figure out a way to get rid of these oils. And they found out that not only they can get rid of them, but they can also make a profit by selling them as food items. And initially they were sold as food items for the livestock industry, because farmers found out that they can make their animals really fat and really heavy if they feed them even a tiny amount of those seed oils. And the reason this happens is that these oils powerfully inhibit your ability to synthesize energy and promote the synthesis of fat. So that's a great thing for a livestock animal. It's not a great thing for us. So I think you immediately see. So you should be able to replace these fats with butter, with olive oil, with coconut oil, and with fat from ruminant animals and from dairy. Dairy contains mostly saturated fat. Ruminant animals such as beef, lamb, goat meat would be great. Chicken would be fine, but just take off the skin. Make sure it's lean meat. In general, if you're eating foods and you're not sure about the fat in the food, it's better if you can remove it as much as possible.
Awesome. And you talked about the seed oils. It sounds like to me that's every packaged or bagged item at the grocery store, like chips or cracker. And aren't they all made with seed oils?
Pretty much all of them. And even if the label doesn't say it, you will often be able to tell by the label, because they have to do a breakdown of the fats. So they used to only say total amount of fat, but these days, many of them actually have a breakdown of polyunsaturated and saturated fat. So you want to get an item that has a mostly saturated fat and as little as possible as unsaturated fat. Some of them are sneaky and diabolical. They'll only do total fat and saturated fat. And if that's the case, then make sure you're getting food that has the proportion, the ratio of saturated fat to the total fat is at least 50% or higher. Because if it's lower, chances are the item contains something that's not listed on the label, but it's probably something cheap, and it's usually the cheapest are the seed oils.
Got it. Awesome. Well, Georgi, I